Good evening, everyone. We are now closing this fourth edition of the Architecture in the Media, and I want to do so with both a full heart of a deep sense of gratitude. Over these past 2 days, we have exchanged not only perspectives, but purpose. The shared mission to make architecture more visible, more understandable, and more present in the public conversation through the media, beyond our professional circles. We have talked about awards, temporary exhibition, media strategies, and the power of art, creativity, installation, and storytelling and journalism to activate public imagination around architecture. Most importantly, we have done this by listening to an incredible, diverse group of voices, and I'd like to thank them one by one. Luis Alemán, Clara Blanchard, and Elena Orte, who opened the conference reflecting on how architecture enters the media spotlight. Nicolas Guichard and Beatrice Lartic from Lab 212, alongside Jacopo Biffi and Lara Monacelli, who brought us into a world where architecture meets art, science, and technology. Amy Frierson, Julia Ricci, and Laura Sangra Herrero, who showed us how events, exhibition, and installation can become powerful media narratives in urban life. Nick Axel, Pilar Marcos, and Albert Nogueras, who critically unpacked the role of architectural award as both tool and story. And in our final conversation, now we will have Guim Costa Calzamilla, Graham Keeley, Anna Ramos, and Isabelle Regnier, who will help us reflect on what it means for Barcelona to become the world capital of architecture in 2026 and to host the World Congress of Architects, and how that story should be told. Thank you all for your generosity and your engagement. I also want to extend my thanks to the institution and teams that made this conference possible, to Anna Ramos, Ivan Blasi, Tony Garijo, Victor Sanchez, Ana Bess, and all the Ms. Van der Rohe Foundation team. And also I want to thank Creative Europe for supporting the event as part of the dissemination program of the European Union Prize for Contemporary Architecture EUMIES Awards. To our partners in this event, the European platform LINA, USM Modular Furniture, Niao Films, and also to the Barcelona City Council hosting us as part of the Setmanes d'Arquitectura. And most of all, I also want to thank my brilliant team at Labo, Camila, Leslie, Joanne, Nicole, Antonio, and Salome that joined us to help and take the dedication and professional to make this event possible. So this closing is not an ending. Now we'll listen our last conversation, and we will wait you all to the next edition. So first of all, we enjoy the presentation now. So Anna.
Hello, everyone. It has been a pleasure. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Ivan, and both Fundación Mies and Labos team, because you have prepared for us an exceptional 2 days of listening to super interesting professionals into the world of journalism and media, and it couldn't have been better. So thank you, Miriam and Ivan. As you all know, we have been talking about this World Congress and World Capital of Architecture 2026 as the hook. We learned this word earlier today. This is the hook to speak about architecture next year, massively in Barcelona at least, and hopefully in Catalonia, Spain, Europe, rest of the world. I should not be the one speaking here. It should be the Barcelona city architect, Maria Buigas, who is the leader of the World Architecture, World Capital of Architecture program in Barcelona, but she is not in Barcelona today, so she asked me to do this. Actually, it makes sense also because Fundación Mies van der Rohe has been commissioned by the City Council to be the coordinating entity for the whole program of 2026 activities. So we have created kind of a full new team of around 10 people now working on it. And you've seen the cloud outside in the pond. That's a little bit how the situation is now. So we are working on it, but we're not yet able to present the full program. That will happen in October, but it's coming. This is very often the slide that opens this presentation. This was a recognition that the Architects Association of Catalonia gave to the Barcelona City Council in recognition of making Barcelona a city which is a capital in the world of architecture, and the city that has made of architecture a true public policy. And the City Council is very proud of this. Not only the mayor who received it, but the rest of the mayors, and also all the, of course, architects that work in the City Council, and lots of technical staff who have been working hard to make this reality. And it has happened in the past, and is still happening now with some of the public housing initiatives or public space arrangements or still architecture competitions. So it's a shared effort for most of the people working in the City Council for this city. This is just a rough slide to make understandable what are we having next year here. So the UIA World Congress of Architecture will be organized by COAX TESCAI, which is the Architects Association, through their team of curators, addressed to a professional discussion, and it takes place in 1 week in the middle of the year. And the UNESCO-UIA World Capital is organized by the Barcelona City Council and addresses citizen dissemination throughout 10 months, starting in February until December. We start in February because in January, it's just too soon after Christmas. So we need time to communicate. We need time for media to create a moment during January to say, in February, everything is starting. Someone earlier spoke about the legacy of these events. So we started by the legacy. The UIA suggested to create a young architects competition to design temporary pavilions that should be dismantled after the World Capital of Architecture. And as was mentioned earlier, this is an issue. What are we building pavilions to dismantle them, to remand? What is this? So the municipality chose to set up this competition for something different, which was, because it already took place last summer, an open competition for ideas for young architects worldwide to transform blind walls into facades. Blind walls which are now, which used to be in kind of dividing properties, but are, for changes in the urban planning, are now next to a park or a street, so they will remain forever facades, but they are closed. So this is a long-standing program of this city, which already, since 30 years ago, little by little, there is a work of the city architects and the owners of those buildings to transform, to create new windows, to put greenery, to get energy-efficient mechanism on those facades. So that was the topic of the competition. And this has been going on. Now we have the executive designs, let's say, and this construction process will start. We are not sure if everything will be finished. We are sure that it will not be finished when the World Capital starts in February, but hopefully they will all be finished in December. And for sure they will all remain as a legacy of the World Capital of Architecture, improving the life of the people who live inside those buildings and improving the life of the people, all of us around, because the public side of the facade becomes a green space and a more beautiful urban landscape for all of us. So it will be 10 blind walls, each in one of the 10 districts of the city. Another of the legacies will be the use of this empty building, which is a beautiful modern architecture style building from the 50s, which used to host the GG publishing house, which for all of us was the beginning of love for architecture, with all those little booklets about architecture. They are not anymore in this building, but this building was bought by the municipality and will be the main venue for the World Capital of Architecture. And hopefully, and that is still something that is a mist, a cloud, but hopefully will lend us a permanent place for discussion on architecture. This municipality, the city architects of Barcelona don't have a space to communicate with their citizens and with the sector all around, like you might have in Paris with the Pavillon de l'Arsenal, or in Prague with the Camp Center. So this is aiming to become something like that, a permanent place for discussion on architecture for the city architect, at least. And that, again, is part of the legacy, to have a place not only for discussion of the city architect, but to dissemination to visitors, generally speaking, of what can architecture, of what are the, not only to visitors, but also to citizens, what are the new plans of the city, how is it changing? So there will be, in that building you saw, there will be this very large model where kind of things can be explained easily to journalists and to general press. That will be in 27, after the World Capital of Architecture. What is going to happen during 26? We have created this 10-month, 10 districts scheme. So every month, every district might become the World Capital of Architecture. They have very different kind of urban layouts, very different histories, very different socio-economical conditions, but they all, one of the efforts of this city has been to democratize quality spaces for all. So they all have good quality architecture in public equipments. They all have good quality architecture in public spaces. So they can all be proud of their identity. There will be more than 2,000 activities throughout the year. It will be decentralized, and we are addressing local, national, and international audience. Just everyone is welcome, but it has to be accessible for all of them, despite of their profession or background. How we have done this? With an open call for proposals and spaces. And we have to be, as I said, Fundación Mies is just coordinating. This is possible because there's an enormous, generous network of institutions, entities, associations in this city that are proudly disseminating what architecture can do for their fellow citizens. And together, we, because we are part of them, have created this incredible program. So we made this open call, what do you think we should do? And we have had all this enormous amount of proposals, which we are now kind of setting, finding spaces for everything, getting the budget, allocating budget so things can be made. I'm speaking about, I don't know, we will have around 50 exhibitions throughout the year, speaking of architecture, very different approaches, but we will have guided tours or workshops, lots of activities with children. We will have after-school activities for children or summer camps in architecture, and all this has been possible just by kind of listening to what the potential of the city has, because this is an incredible hub for architectural dissemination, not only for architecture buildings or architectural projects. So that's what we have been doing in this very same space, like gathering people and listening and seeing what is it possible to do with the efforts, joint efforts of everyone. We will make public, we hope, In October, we will be able to have like a real program of what's going to happen. Now in June, all the entities and everyone will exactly know where are you doing this and when and what's the budget and things. So in October, early October, using the opportunity of the Monde Cult meeting, which is the meeting of culture ministers that UNESCO will organize here in Barcelona, we will be able to present the 80% of the program of the 2026. In case you wish to propose still something or get more information, that's our general email. Of course, we are at your disposition, and that's the webpage, which is not the definitive webpage, but it's the webpage that is offering information of the whole process so far. So that's it. I hope it was clear enough. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Anna has explained very well, Mies van der Rohe, well, the Barcelona municipality, through the Mies van der Rohe Foundation, is organizing the Barcelona World Capital of Architecture. And in parallel, there will be the Congress by the end of June. And to explain a little bit the story, everything started when the municipality knew that the UNESCO and the UIA, like 4 or 5 years ago, arrived to an agreement that the city that decided, that the UIA decided to host the Congress will automatically be decided to be the world capital. So in a way, we could say that the architects at the end, we do a present to a city because we decide to do a Congress in a city and automatically the UNESCO declares the city the UNESCO World Capital of Architecture. So as Anna has explained, it's very interesting how both things can complement. The Congress will be a professional Congress, and the capitality that will last for 10 months will be a very nice opportunity that architects and all that has to do with architecture get in contact with the city, with people, with the citizenship. So it's a fantastic way, bottom up, to communicate what architects can do for a more comfortable life and a more healthy life. Talking about the Congress, as I said, when we won the candidacy against Pekin, we started thinking about how can we do a Congress here in Barcelona. As you know, in '96, there was a fantastic Congress, a famous Congress, and it was a huge success. And we had to think about how we could do another Congress 30 years later. Times have changed a lot. We don't have the same architects and architecture that we had then. There's no Ignasi Sola Morales. There's no the ambience that we had then after the Olympics. So thinking about how we could do it, we proposed the UIA to make a competition for the curatorship of the Congress for the first time. The UIA Congresses have been going on from 1948, every 3 years, and our proposal was to do this competition in order to have curators that could give fresh air, let me say it that way, to the scientific committee that will be chosen by the UIA and the National Architects Association, that in this case was CESCAE, and the Catalan extension, that is COAC. So we did the competition. There was 24, it was an international competition. We had 24 proposals. And finally, the group, it's a group that won. It's 6 people under the title Becoming Architectures for a Planet in Transition, or the Becoming Team, what we call them the Becoming Team, who are Tomeu Ramis and Pau Cerquellas, who are here today with us, and Maria Giramé, Mariona Benedito, Pau Baget, and Carmen Torres. So we are working with them from many months ago on the concept of the Congress, also getting together with the scientific committee that helps the curators to have a bigger span, the global span, and to reach everywhere as much as we can around the world to make the Congress richer. So we have a very important coordinating office. I think Javier is around here, who is the director, Javier Rodriguez Olivarri. Me, I'm the director, and we're really working hard with many other people of the COAC, of the FESCAE, the curators, and some companies that are we are hiring to help us, like Labo, who is the responsible of the communication of the Congress. Yes, so just to be very short, the idea of the curators is that consider Barcelona as a laboratory, and this year, now, the next month or in 2 months, there's going to be 12 research by design teams that they will be working through a year in order to get to the Congress with new concepts and new ideas to enter the debate. So apart from the speakers, there will be researchers by design that will enrich also the debate. Apart from this type of a one-year laboratory, there will be also a one-week laboratory. We will have like 5 workshops for students from all around the world that also will be working in different themes of the city. I think there's 6 in the city and 6 international themes that will also be in the debates. So we will have very interesting speakers with different ways of communicating architecture, roundtables, keynote speakers, critical antagonists. So there will be like cross opinions. And this laboratories, this one-year laboratory or this week laboratory, will enrich the debate with very actual themes. In this moment, there's a call for participants going on. It will close the 2nd of June, so you still have time. And I think we have 900 proposals already from all around the world. When you see the list of countries that are proposing things, it's incredible. It will be tough to select, I'm sure. The curators are saving 1/3 of the space and time for the call for participants to share and to meet with the speakers and participants that the curators have chosen under their 6 concepts of becoming. Okay, they have organized the call with 3 main issues: critical design, critical essay, critical image. As you can imagine, critical design are projects. Critical essay is writings and text about architecture and urban planning, landscape design. And critical image, it's including in the Congress also the image and the audiovisual part of architecture, like films, documentals, documentaries, and all this type, that also will be part of what we have to talk about. And then, just to finalize, explain to you that the idea is things in the Congress will happen in the middle of the year of the capitality. So as you can imagine, there will be many things happening from February to November. And the Congress will be at the end of June. Will be 3 days of professional debate. And so it will be all around the city. The architecture debate and the relation with the citizenship will be all around the city. The Congress itself will be in 2 main venues. One is the 3 Chimneys of San Adrià, with the idea that continue talking about how Barcelona has to grow in governance and how Barcelona has to fill the empty spaces, all this metropolitan idea that we have to continue to speak about. So in San Adrià, we will have one of the main venues, and then communicated by the tram, a very sustainable way of transport. We will get to the, sorry. To the hub, we will be a little bit the more conventional convention center, but with a lot of square meters dedicated to the Congress. More or less one third of the debates or the action will take place in the hub, in the Plaza Las Glorias. You know that Plaza Las Glorias? Well, there's a very interesting thing that happens in 2026, is that for these universal casualties, it's the 100th year of the death of Gaudí. It's the Barcelona Congress and capital of architecture, and 150 years of Cerdà death. So it's like impossible to do it better. So the Plaza Las Glorias was for Cerdà the center of the city. So it's nice also for us conceptually to have this venue here. So we'll have the venue here in Las Tres Chimeneas and the tram going up and down, taking architects around. So that's a little bit what I wanted to tell you. We have the two curators here. If you have some questions for them and for me, we can follow the debate. Thank you.
So I'm Graham Keeley. I'm a journalist based in Spain. I'm a freelance journalist, so I work for various publications and media. Among those are Euronews, which is a television station and website. And I also write for British newspapers, The Independent, The Times, Telegraph, Daily Mail, and sometimes for American media. My work for Euronews has been quite a lot, concentrated quite a lot on architecture, but I've also written for other publications about the subject.
No, sorry, I'm laughing because I wrote a sort of essay on my relationship between journalism, architecture. Well, anyhow, hi. My name is Isabelle Regnier, and I write on architecture and heritage for the French newspaper, daily newspaper Le Monde. And so I don't know how deep you want me to get into my presentation, or...
You start, and otherwise I start connecting.
Okay, because I think one of the questions you asked me by writing was about how I came to write on architecture, and it's a sort of long path, because I became a journalist, first of all, after having worked for cultural institutions in different countries, and my desire to write came out of a sort of frustration I had. I worked for galleries, for museums, for festivals, for private public institutions, and each time I was always frustrated to see that curatorial choices, artistic choices were very often driven by interests that weren't necessarily purely artistic or scientific or whatever, but that there was behind that sort of another agenda that came from power of money or politics. So I'm of course, it's very schematic what I'm saying, but at the end of each of my experiences, I was a bit frustrated and disappointed, and so I figured after a short while, it was very short experiences, I was still young, but that maybe what would be interested would be to write on that, and to write on cultural institutions, and on economics and politics of the cultural sector. And that's what I did, but I started doing that in cinema, just, so it's like life brought me there. So I started writing in Cahiers du Cinéma in France, but as a journalist. And then one thing led to another, and I became a film critic, but for the newspaper Le Monde. And so I was a film critic for 15 years, and then, well, I felt the need to change and to do something else, and because I wanted, what I was longing for was to be able to address what the changes I was, the changes, everything that's going on in the world. I wanted to have, I don't know, to be able to address that in my work. And I felt that film criticism, although cinema is very political, wasn't, I don't know, I felt too far from that. And I was really, I had the feeling that the transformation of the built environment I was very sensitive to that. I was sensitive to it on a sensible level, on an aesthetic level, but I also had the intuition, without knowing really much about architecture, that something was materialized in this, in the transformation of our cities, of the materials, of the way things are being built, of balance of power, and that there were things I could probably say about that, and that nothing was, especially in the general press, well, we already talked about that today, architecture is not a big topic, and especially what I was seeing, what I was feeling wasn't really transcribed. And so I was lucky enough to be able to switch from cinema to architecture. And maybe I'll say something about Le Monde, because Le Monde has a long story with architecture. The architectural section was created in 1977, the year Centre Pompidou opened, and it was created by a journalist whose name is Frédéric Edelman, whom maybe some people here have met and known, because he was really an immense writer and an immense architecture critic, and he really traveled all around the world. He wrote on heritage. He covered contemporary architecture in the 80s, 90s, 2000s for Le Monde, and he made this section very important worldwide. He got a medal from the city of Barcelona. He did a lot of coverage of the Olympics and the transformation of the city here. And he was very important to me because it's really reading his articles that opened also my mind to architecture, that made me realize that it's something that really interested me, that also made me realize that it was probably one of the coolest jobs that was possible, and sort of opened a desire to try and follow his path. And although his example is, I have a great admiration for him, and it's a bit impressive to try and follow his steps. But he was also very generous and encouraging, and so he gave me a lot of confidence. And I'm doing things differently, but I guess there's a form of continuity, and I guess that's probably enough for my presentation.
Thank you, Isabelle. And maybe connecting with this, Graham, you want to explain us how you arrived to write about architecture?
Yes, I came to write about architecture from a rather different angle. Because I certainly didn't go into journalism to write about architecture. It's more of an accident than on purpose. I went into journalism to meet people, travel, and do a different thing every day. Perhaps a bit of a cliche, but so I write about. When I was working in the UK, where I'm from, I was writing for national newspapers there, general news. And also I was a crime reporter at one stage. Then I moved to Spain, and Spain became my subject, as it were, and Latin America at times. But again, it's anything from, for instance, I'll take you through my week so far. Today has been writing a profile of Luis Enrique, the manager of PSG. You may know him. And the day before that was writing about the housing crisis in Spain, a big subject. So general news, a bit of sport, very occasionally. And architecture has come into this because I've been encouraged by Euronews particularly, as I mentioned, to write about that subject. They're very keen on that. And also certain stories have just come up and appealed to editors at the time. It's a bit of luck and a bit of just thinking that would be a story which appeals to a more general audience. Because as you rightly say, architecture is kind of difficult to get. It's sometimes a bit of a fringe subject. It's difficult perhaps to get coverage unless you are lucky and you work for Le Monde or newspapers which have a dedicated section. So I come to this subject from a rather different angle, and that's my background.
Thank you very much. And I'm thinking in big events that a bit, no, the framework of this conversation. We would like to understand a bit more. What do you imagine? How do you decide what cover? For example, looking to a year like Barcelona, no, or imagine a big event as you have the Olympic Games in Paris, in France. How do you decide what to cover? Which is your way to put the themes on the table of the editorial meetings?
It's a bit of both, really. Sometimes an idea will come up, I'll read about it, see it on the television, and I'll think that will appeal to a certain publication, or the other way around. They will come to me and say, we're really keen on this. I'll give an example. I did a story about the architecture of football stadiums, which it was Euronews who said to me, look, this is the kind of thing where, people are going to churches less and less these days, but they go to football stadiums, and they also go to see, pop stars in these same stadiums. These are the kind of new cathedrals of the modern age. But who are the architects behind them? Because it's becoming a massive business, a very sophisticated business. We want you to go and do a story with one of the big companies behind this. Go to London and visit it. So that was Euronews coming to me and suggesting an idea. That idea took a lot of time to work on, but proved to be quite popular. But mostly it's me suggesting ideas that I think might prove interesting. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Isabelle, what happened with the Olympic Games? How was the coverage?
For a big event like that, and mostly for any topic, I really consider myself as a critic, and that's where I get my legitimacy from, for myself. Because I arrived in this area without knowing much about architecture, but I had been a critic in cinema, and I know I have I see things as a critic, even in a political way and an aesthetic way. And so when something like the Olympics arrives, I'm expected to write by my hierarchy, to write on what's going to be built for the event, because mostly I really make my own agenda, but that's really the kind of situation where I'm expecting to write something, but really I'm very, very free then to do whatever I want. And so what I try to do is first of all, I try to read as much as I can on architecture of the Olympics, but also there were books written on all the way that the event was prepared. Books written by specialists of environmental issues, of gentrification, so I sort of read as much as I could. There were different I wrote a number of pieces over probably 1.5 years. So first of all, because the big thing that was constructed in Paris was the Olympic Village, which Dominique Perrault was the chief urbanist or chief architect or whatever. So I met with him first, then I went to site visits, Then I went to see what it looked like. So first of all, I sort of presented the thing. Then I wrote a sort of critical vision. An architectural critique of the thing. There were also a lot of restoration and transformation, and so I wrote on various projects, and I also wrote on different books that were very critical. And at the end of the event, one of the things that were really interesting, the idea was to try, since it was supposed to give a picture of the, the state of the excellency of French architecture, expertise, etc. So I tried to analyze how excellent it was, or what it was saying about the state of architecture in France, and also this idea of heritage. What does it mean? How is it embodied? What sacrifices are made to get a special heritage? And at the end, one of the things that was very interesting from my point of view is that the Olympics is like the most mediatized event, I think, in the world. It's I think it's number one. And so the architecture, since those games were supposed to be very sustainable, there was not too much being built. There was a lot of adaptive reuse and transformation. And the idea was to be sober and to be as ecological and green as possible, even though it was very much greenwashing. But so there was nothing spectacular that was being built, as opposed to, for instance, Barcelona or Beijing. Or it was pretty sober, at least in the form, and so it wasn't mediatized at all. It was promoted as something that was supposed to be very virtuous and exemplary and all that, but you didn't see anything that was built on television. All you saw was a sort of idealized vision of Paris. Very beautiful. It was very beautiful to be in Paris. That's true. They did an amazing job to make the city look as a fairy tale, a gem, Disney, Emily in Paris, whatever. And so, that was my last piece, was trying to analyze this, the way that architecture was totally invisibilized, paradoxically, by the Olympic Games.
And Graham, what do you think is the expectation a bit from Euronews, for example, being you here to cover a big event like could be the World Capital of Architecture, and so because I know that recently, you were appointed as like correspondent of architecture for.
Yes, I was. What the expectation will be? Anna spoke about hooks. Euronews are obsessed with the Sagrada Familia, and
It's important to know, no?
the expectation that it will be finished finally next year, which in some ways may overshadow the World Congress. However, it could also be seen as an excuse to write about all the other architecture which is going to appear, all the ideas around architecture. So it may put a spotlight on the subject, so I think it should be an excuse to do both. The simple story, if the basilica is finally finished, of course, will be a massive story. But the other thing will be, everything else that happens here, because it's a great opportunity to write on these other ideas, whatever they may be.
Because something that we also touched, in the other roundtable and conversation, you Isabelle, you write about culture. Graham is covering more about society and what is happening, in the city. Do you think it's possible to try what we would like to do, is like to speak about architecture, about the good things, without looking for the spectacle or a bit the drama and the stories that has something very spectacular also in a negative way to present architecture? What is your?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
In your experience,
Yeah.
is it possible to speak about architecture in a normal way, also about the good things that are not necessarily spectacular or negative?
In Le Monde, I feel I'm really extremely lucky because, well, you saw the images of my articles, and really, it's most of the time I have a whole page, and so I have a lot of space, and I really can propose any kind of subject, and so the scope of what I write on is extremely wide. And it can go from a architect building at the other end of the world to rural architects who work on transforming an old farm into a school for disabled kids, to coming here in Barcelona and write about the Suburbia exhibition at CCCB. It's really, and to write about young architects, collectives who are working on environmental issues, or to write on artificial intelligence and what it's doing to architects. So I really, depending on this, it's infinite. And in the users is a very strong drive. I have the environmental quality, the aesthetic, and so it really doesn't have to be spectacular. And if I'm going for the spectacular, because I'm not ignoring it, but I'm quite careful not to write too much on architecture and not to answer to all the solicitations, and that can't be the only reason. If I write on a architect project, it's going to be more. I'm going to try to integrate it in a subject that, how maybe it's interacting with the whole city or whatever, but I'm really never, at least trying not to follow a spectacular agenda. Yeah.
I think it's perfectly possible to write about architecture without it being controversial or involving big names. I mean, I wrote recently about Philip Stark's olive mill down in Ronda, La Almazara. That's a big name. It got a massive reaction. I think, though, it may not have been just for the architecture. Maybe because of the interview I did with Philip Stark, who's, shall we say, diplomatically, quite an entertaining guy. But also, I wrote about a local library here in Barcelona which won an award. It's a local library in essence. But again, massive reaction from readers interested in this place, because you may know of this library, and it looks like a stack of books. It's in a very unfashionable part of Barcelona. The architects are quite well known in Spain, but perhaps outside, not so much. Anyway, there was a whole load of people queuing to get in.
And in that case,
Quite
we were
unusual.
speaking about the hooks and the prize, the award that the library won was.
Yes, that was all in the article, but really it was about how popular this place was and how they'd made it into, but how popular it was with local people, and not tourists at all, because tourists wouldn't even know where it was. So that's not really involving big names or anything controversial.
What I realized is that because I realized, I mean, my articles are very much read. I mean, not all of them, but they have a lot of success, and I don't think the success is linked to the names of the, even though of course when in France I write on Jean Nouvel, everyone will read it. I mean, everyone who has slightest interest in architecture. But maybe people who don't even have an interest in architecture will more spontaneously go to other subjects, because really what I try to do is to vulgarize architecture in a noble sense. I mean, to make it accessible, to try to fill this gap between the large public and the topic of architecture, which people think it's not addressed to them, and they're not entitled to even think about it, because they think it's too complicated, it's something for specialists, and really what I'm trying to do is saying you're concerned with this. It's the framework of your life, and every step of your life is determined by that, and you can have a say on it, and there's a lot of things to think about and talk about, and people are really interested. People from any kind of backgrounds, and it's really not. And especially, I think, the time of spectacular architecture and of starchitects, it's starting to be a bit behind us, especially in Europe, maybe not in other parts of the world. And I think people are really, really happy when you're able to make architecture and what's at stake in architecture accessible and intelligible.
And in this sense, which is the relation with architects? When you decide to cover a topic about architecture, you normally speak with the architects, with the authors. This is source for you, or you prefer to visit the building and to understand the space and the architecture without the mediation of the...
Should I answer first?
You go first.
Yeah, that's especially coming from cinema. That was a very disquieting experience at first, and having the architect explaining the project while you were discovering it and trying to stay independent. It's really a sort of gymnastic that's very demanding. And especially at the end, usually the architect, not usually, but sometimes the architect asks you, so what did you think? It's really horrible. And but I understood quite quickly that it's necessary, because you need to understand the project, you need to understand what was asked, what was the situation, what they had to deal with. So it's necessary, and then you have to make, there's a huge effort to make to sort of dissociate what the architect is telling you, taking it as an information and staying independent. It's really physical. There's something, that's how I feel it.
I have to say, so are there any architects in the audience?
I think a lot.
Well, honestly, I must echo those words, because sometimes I feel they speak a different language to, certainly in my case, English, and I have to sometimes ring them back just to ask them if I understood correctly, because I don't want to misinterpret what they were trying to do. And you're right, of course, that the brief for a job may be quite complex, and us mere mortals may not quite get it, but sometimes you have to simplify things, obviously, when you're explaining things to readers who are not experts in architecture or architects, and therefore you want to do that without ruining the original vision. I find I have to be quite careful so as not to get it wrong. But generally, get on fine with architects. Maybe not after that.
The language and the collaboration between architects, the media, and in this effort to reach the general public is very important. And I think it's very important to stay today here to speak about it. But I would like to open the debate, public, and listen from your question. That could be a lot, I know, so let's start.
Hay una cosa que me preocupa mucho. Oh, I'm so sorry. There's something that worries me very much. Your comment, I know it was tongue-in-cheek, about making things simple for the general public. I'm general public. I'm not stupid. And I think the problem is this idea of thinking the way architects explain things is so complicated. If something is worth explaining, it doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes we complicate things because we want to cover up our own ignorance, or we want to make something larger than it really is. So please, when you talk about general public, I think it's general public has good opinions. We should listen to the general public because they will help make the projects better. General public are people who are educated, like you and me. And I think the idea that we talk about architecture as if it were something we all knew what it is, but you had a comment today, architecture is not necessarily this complex theory and this complex building and complex everything. Sometimes architecture is the space that we live in and how we feel about it. And I really appreciate when you, the journalists, help explain that, give the clues, shine a light on things. But please, your point of view is probably, well, certainly it's as valid as an architect's, it's as valid as mine, it's as valid as everybody here in the room. And the general public, I think we have to stop making this idea that the general public are some sort of ignorant people who don't know vocabulary and who say things in a simple way. Sometimes the general public are people who just want to live their life, want to understand the world, want to look to the future with hope. And if you help them do that, I'm sure it's a wonderful, wonderful job that you do.
Thank you, Marta.
I just want to add something. Even if I was trained as an architect and I am an architectural journalist, sometimes I don't understand what some architects say.
Of course.
And like, I imagine you have difficulty starting, let's say, from a journalistic background too, but sometimes like it's an overcomplication of things that it's not helping anyone sometimes. I have a feeling.
Just to answer your question or to bounce on what you said, when I say, for instance, that what I'm trying to do is to vulgarize, actually, I think that, I don't know if I use the term general public, but I consider myself as this general public because I'm not trained as an architect. And I think someone told me when I started writing on architecture that there was something very genuine about my pieces, because what I try to do is understand myself and translate it in my own and make it just sensible. Because when you hear an architect in 80% of the case talking about their projects, it's cryptic. And you're not going to write that in a newspaper because I don't think you would like it. It's like so dry. It doesn't convey anything else than the technical aspect, which isn't very interesting.
There's another factor.
That's what I think. Except in a specialized, publication. But I trust my readers to be educated, intelligent people, at least. But there's something specific about the architecture world as a I don't know, as a structure that
I was just going to add that it's not perhaps the general public have to explain these cryptic ideas to, or complex ideas. It's our editors, and they're going to be, if they don't understand what we're writing, it's not going to get published. So, you know, we have to try and understand it, and as I said before, check it with the person whose idea it was, the architect themselves. So to make sure we've got the vision right, I think that's important.
And it's not only translating what the architect is saying, it's understanding what he's saying, but also your appreciation of the space, of the place you're in, of how it functions in the city, in the scenery, and that's what a critic is. And that's what you want to read if you're reading if you're a non-specialist reading on architecture. It doesn't mean that you're an ignorant or whatever. It's just mediation.
Any other questions over there?
Hi. I think it's a very interesting point. So I am an architect that I dedicate myself explaining architecture, and actually also this building. And now we're sitting here, and this building at its time was perceived as something quite abstract. I think there was only one publication in Barcelona, very few, about this building when it made in 1929. In spite of everything, it came in architecture history, and of course everybody talks about it. But I think modern architecture has a certain abstraction that requires interpretation and explanation. So it's not like it's about ignorance, but it's like architecture has its very own world. And in order to open it to people that are not in this world, it requires more explanation maybe than not modern architecture or contemporary architecture. So I think it's not so much about the cryptical thing, but it's about the abstraction, like this building, that requires explanation. Then you can also address people who may not be, or fascinate people who may not be professionals. So you sort of have to make the bridge. Mm-hmm. I think this is the point. Because then you really get also incredible comments, and people suddenly who normally walk by this building and just don't see why it's special. So it needs an explanation.
But I think it's the function of criticism.
There was a couple of
I work as an artist with Nicolas. And I wanted to know regarding when you write for architecture, about architecture, how do you place the level of subjectivity for you as a journalist? How do you put the level of that? Because it's your feeling with your culture around architecture, historic approach, or your background behind that. But maybe as a writer of a novel, for you, is it important to put some subjectivity inside what you write in order to create connection, not to stay on the idea of the facts, but to put another level, like when we talk about, I don't know, feelings inside a building? I don't know if you have a feedback about that.
It depends on the pieces I write, but sometimes I really write on the building and on its qualities, and then in that kind of pieces there's there's a part of subjectivity, especially in the description, which I sometimes write like an architectural promenade, and so there's a question of sensibility to light, to and metaphors that might come, but it's never 100% subjective. It's less subjective than writing for a film, because there's something more. There's this materiality. There's something more. It's solid architecture, so there's something that's objective. There's a part of objectivity, objective description. What are we talking about? How does it hold? Why is it here? It can't be 100% subjective. And then sometimes I write like investigations or whatever that have like almost no subjectivity, although I refuse the idea that journalism is an objective matter in any case.
Good question. I think it can be quite subjective. There's buildings I've been to see and thought, it's fantastic, great design, great vision, and it must have come out in the piece I've written, and other ones I've hated, frankly. But in those cases, you try and be completely objective, just talk about, let the architect talk about it, and just try and keep it to the facts, and I'm not going to start criticizing it in the articles I write. I'm not an architecture critic and don't have the background to do that, if I wanted to. But I think, you can't help it sometimes if you see like a particular building and you think it's what a great idea, or it seems a great kind of concept. It comes out. I hope not too much. As I say, I'm not a critic.
So you mean you fight against that, but you let it?
I think I don't fight much, but I think inevitably it will come out. Not much.
Okay. Maybe a question related to the roundtable, that I think it was big events on architecture and media, no? And a few weeks ago, there was the opening of Venice, and I'm pretty sure that Le Monde and Euronews, but also all the media here in Catalonia was speaking about Venice. And it's not only Venice, there are other biennales and triennales. We can talk about Milan, Lisbon, Chicago. Biennales these last years, these last decades, I think that they take a lot of attention of media. But when we talk about UIA and the Congress that is doing every 3 years, is something that and at least for us, or maybe not that much for you because you were in the 96, I was not there, it is something that is not that known, not only for the people that are general public, as you were saying, but even for the architects themselves. Mm-hmm. The UIA is, they have their headquarters in France, for example, in Paris. I don't know how much of the UIA is being spread on the media. Is it something that is interested with the media or not?
I'm not very much aware of the activities of the UIA. I know it exists. I've heard of it. Sometimes it's mentioned. Last time it was mentioned to me was in Venice when I was interviewing the Palestinian delegation that was hosted by the British Pavilion, and they were asking for Israel to be banned of the UIA. But besides that, I don't know much about the UIA. I don't receive information. And so I'm quite curious to learn what you're doing and maybe discover that next year.
The thing will be also is it the thing that is related to the biennales and triennales, that they have pavilions and they have this kind of sense of showing off, rather than the congresses that are more about to speak and to divulgate ideas, that maybe it is not that fashion to go there and to take some news out of them.
Well, then there's one thing, which sort of brings us back to what we were saying, but it's true that architectural talks is not very sexy most of the time. And I don't listen that much to architects talking. I do it when a conference or subject interests me. I watch things online, but it's. I think it's a harsh language. It's pretty. It's not very open. It's very much architects talking to architects. That's what I feel. But I've never been to UIA talks, so maybe it's different.
In Barcelona will be.
Yeah.
Barcelona will be very good, Pau.
After this.
I think certainly Euronews may have covered that in the past. I haven't, but they may have, and that's all I can say, really. Again, you know, we have covered the annual prizes, which have been going on, the European prizes. That's been an annual thing covered religiously, but beyond that, not much more. They tend to go for particular projects that they find interesting and which have a story behind them. One story I did recently was Can Gomez, of the situation it's in, the history it has, and the whole issue around the airport here in Barcelona. But that can vary. But to answer your question, I think it has been touched, but I haven't certainly written about it.
We will do our best. Maybe we have the last question.
Hi, I want to ask a simple question. How is the process to choose the building you want to talk about? Because I really think it's important that journalists write about architecture and not architects write about architecture to avoid endogamia. Because I'm pretty sure that some architects that write about some pieces, 50% is because that pieces are good, and the other 50% is because they want to promote some colleagues or some friends. My question is, that result is because you hear an echo of architects that say that building is good? Is the result of your own research, and you want to give voice to that buildings that are in silent because of that endogamia?
I'll answer. Often it's all about the building, not the architects, in my case, because very often stories about architecture are to do with the photographs, and we're not that interested in pictures of architects, with respect, and it's all about the photographs. Will they work? Is there a good story behind it? And that's normally it. Have they achieved something, the architects, if they've won prizes? But lots of architects win prizes. It's very much, those are the criteria.
Well, I don't think either of us can be really suspected of endogamia, since you're writing on everything that happens in Spain, and architecture is just a part of it. And I come from cinema, and one of the things that's great about that is that first of all, so I started writing on architecture. I was over 40 years old, and so I'm absolutely not part of the architectural scene, and I don't have time to go to social events, and I'm pretty bored when I hear architects talking about their work, and so I know very few architects, and I receive a lot of solicitations by PR companies. I pick my subjects because I read professional reviews, or magazines, international things. And then I see a lot of stuff, and I don't write on everything I see, and I write on something, on a building or on any kind of project, because I find it interesting once I've visited it. And sometimes I'm going to see 2, 3, 4 different projects that I don't feel are maybe strong enough, or I don't feel I feel I've written maybe on similar stuff not very long ago, so I'm not going to write another piece that sort of echoes it too much. And then I'll have seen 2 or 3 articles, and then I have a sort of topic, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to talk about those 3 buildings because it tells something about a specific subject, how social housing, or the use of clay in architecture, or whatever. And so that's how I pick my stories, and it has nothing to do, almost nothing to do with the architect. The only thing, like when we have a very important project by a very major architect in France, I will go and check it, and probably I will write on it. But it can be a harsh criticism. It can be very enthusiastic. It really depends. But that's something that's sort of expected, because it's like an event. But it's super rare, actually. There's not that much going on in architecture in France. So, well, there is, but the really big projects, there are not that many. It's like once every 2 years. So, and besides that, I don't think I'm in any kind of endogamia, but maybe I'm a little bit without even being conscious of it, but not too much. I can assure that.
Thank you very much, Isabelle, Graham. I think it was very interesting to listen how you work, how you pick the themes for your articles, and thank you very much to everybody. Maybe Ivan, I don't know if you want to say something. I think we can.
Well, no, just in general, we wish to thank everybody that has participated, all of you that have come today here, for sharing also your points of view, obviously from the stage, but also from the audience over here. Also thanking the LINA team. So here we have 2 teams from this LINA architecture platform, the European platform, one of which, Beatrice and Nicolas, are the authors of the installation that you are hearing and you will see outside. But we also have Giacomo and who have been streaming live on Radio Lina all these conversations. So we're very happy of this other European Commission supported project. We also have USM, who has also supported this architecture in the media. Thank you, Medium, and your team at Labo, and our team at the Mies van der Rohe Foundation with Anna Ramos. And we wish the best for the World Capital of Architecture and the UIA Congress next year. So a lot of things to come, a lot of things to reflect on, and to continue pushing in kind of understanding how we speak about architecture and how it can be sometimes better explained. So thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.